The film begins at school during a fight that looks like it's been building for a while. Finney, now older and stronger, is on top of a bully who finally pushed him too far. He hits him again and again, unable to pull himself back until Gwen rushes in and begs him to stop, in which he finally steps away, breathing hard, the crowd staring at him like he's someone they don't recognize anymore. Later, Ernesto pulls up with his car and invites Gwen to a local festival. She agrees, and the moment gives the siblings a breath of normal life before night comes. That evening, the house feels too quiet. Finney steps outside to clear his head, but the air doesn't help. Every shadow reminds him of the grabber, every still moment leaves him alone with memories he can't shake. Inside, Gwen starts sleepwalking again. She drifts through the house as if pulled by something in the dark. Finney shakes her awake, startled to see the sleepwalking had returned after years of silence. At school the next day, Ernesto sits with Gwen and hands her a small deck of tarot cards. He knows she leans into the spiritual world more than she admits, and she takes them with a small grateful smile as she's going to use them if she needs to. That night, Gwen wakes to a ringing that shouldn't exist. It's distant but sharp, pulling her outside. She follows the sound through empty streets until she stands at the grabber's house. She gets in through the basement and picks up the black phone. A voice, trembling and hollow, tells her they were killed and their spirits are trapped in the mountains, and asks for her help. The voice sounds like their mother, which shocks Gwen. Finney arrives and finds her in the basement, sleepwalking again, terrified but clear enough to repeat what she heard. She tells him that their mother wants them to go to a youth camp by the lake, as there's something waiting for them there. The next morning Gwen begs Finney to trust her intuition. She feels something deeper is happening, something connected to their mother's past. Finney doesn't want to go, but the fear in her eyes forces his hand. He packs his things, and Ernesto joins them, and they drive for hours through cold empty roads until the snow thickens around them. When they reach the camp, a storm is tearing through the trees. The male counselor leads Finney and Ernesto into a cabin. Gwen is taken to a separate cabin by a female counselor who leaves her alone with the wind rattling the windows. When Gwen finally falls asleep, the past hits her full force. She sees flashes of what happened in that cabin years ago. Then she sees something under the frozen lake, a body trapped in the ice, and shoots awake in a panic. Finney slips out of his cabin late that night to smoke. The storm muffles every sound until a phone rings somewhere in the dark. He follows it to a pay phone and answers. The grabber's voice cuts through the static. Before Finney can move, the booth locks. The walls feel too tight and his breath stutters as the panic attacks claw their way in. Back in Gwen's cabin, scratching begins under the floor. She leans down, and a bloody boy crawls out from under the bed, then more figures appear behind him, forcing her to scream. Finney bursts in, shakes her awake, and tells her it wasn't real, but her tears say otherwise. Shaken, Gwen goes to Ernesto's cabin and asks to stay with him. He can tell she's terrified, and lets her. They settle in the dark, and she finally confesses what she's been hiding. Her mother saw things too, and it ruined her. Gwen is afraid it's happening to her now. Ernesto tells her gift isn't a punishment. It's something rare, something worth having. As they lean closer, Finney coughs and stops their moment before anything happens. The next morning, the counselor introduces himself as Mondo, and with him is Mustang, his niece. They eat breakfast and ask why the three of them came all the way up the mountain in the middle of a storm. Gwen explains their mother was once at this camp, and they're trying to understand what she experienced. Mondo remembers her, and tells them he'll later share what he knows, but for now he has work to do. Soon, a phone rings again. Finney answers, expecting the grabber, but instead hears a little boy whispering that he's cold and lost and needs help. Later, their father calls too, worried about the storm. They tell him they can't return, as the roads are buried in snow. That night Gwen slips into another dream. She sees her mother as a teenager standing in the same booth Finney was trapped in, speaking to a ghost. Then she sees one of the victims running through the forest, terrified, until he disappears and only his bloody jacket remains. Gwen gasps and jolts awake. She then sees a shadow standing outside her door. She steps out and finds the ghosts of the dead boys waiting for her, guiding her toward the kitchen cabin. Inside, the lights move around on their own, and when she walks a couple of meters, the grabber steps out of the darkness and slams into her. She's lifted and thrown around the room while the staff rush in, seeing her tossed by an invisible force. The fire in the kitchen flares, and the entity drags her toward it until Ernesto and Mustang grab her and wrench her free. Finney arrives too late to see what happened, but when he looks at Gwen, she's visibly traumatized. Later, the camp staff gather the group and usher them toward a small church on the edge of the property. One of the staff members keeps staring at Gwen with wide and uneasy eyes. After what happened in the kitchen, she's convinced Gwen is possessed and needs deliverance before things get worse. Mondo shuts the talk down and sits Gwen down, asking her to explain her dreams. Gwen tells him everything. She says she can talk to the dead, that they show her pieces of what happened to them and what they need. She explains how she saw the boys wandering the forest the night before, lost and trapped between life and death. Mondo goes still, as he remembers those boys. They went missing years ago and their families never got answers. Finney steps in and asks him if he's heard of the grabber. Mondo nods, as everyone knew of the case after the news reported on it. He tells them he's been searching for the missing kids on his own for years, long after everyone else gave up. He then pulls out an old photo. It shows him as a young counselor during an earlier summer camp. Standing beside him is their mother, bright and youthful, but another figure stands in the back of the picture. Finney recognizes the face instantly as the grabber, but Mondo knew him as Billy. Gwen realizes what that means. This camp was the grabber's beginning. Those boys Mondo remembers weren't just missing, they were his first victims. She tells Mondo the boys want to be found, that their bodies are somewhere here, and the grabber still feeds on their fear. Mustang speaks up without hesitation and suggests the frozen lake. That night, Mondo sits by his radio, when the static suddenly twists into a voice. The grabber speaks through it. Mondo tells him they're close, that once they find the boys, his grip will break. The grabber's tone snaps from calm to furious. The cabin lights shut off and something invisible crashes against Mondo's window, leaving a twisted snow face pressed into the glass, as the grabber promises he'll be waiting. Morning comes sharp and cold, as the group heads straight for the lake. They scrape away layers of snow until the ice shows, then stare through it, searching for any hint of bodies below. Hours pass with nothing to show for it. Exhausted, frozen, and defeated, they return to their cabins as the sun disappears behind the mountains. Gwen falls asleep that night and slips instantly into another vision. She sees a paperboy riding through a quiet street, tossing newspapers onto lawns. The grabber's van pulls up and kidnaps him. The vision snaps, and Gwen sees her mother bolt awake years ago from the same dream. Her mother grabs her keys and drives to the grabber's house. She peers through the basement window and sees the boy chained below. The grabber catches her, drags her inside, and forces her into his van. The dream shifts, and Gwen is in the van too. The grabber tells her he wants her to see what he did. He takes her to a garage and shows her mother hanging from the rafters, staged to look like she ended her own life. Gwen stumbles back in horror. The grabber tells her that if he kills her in the dream, he's sure she'll die in the physical too and goes after her. Gwen appears on the frozen lake and sees Mondo standing where the ice begins to crack. A phone rings in her dream. When she picks it up, it's the grabber. She turns and sees him behind Mondo, smashing the ice with his axe, and soon, the ice gives way. Mondo falls into the freezing black water, and the grabber wraps the phone cord around Gwen's neck. She struggles in both worlds, choking in her sleep. Soon, something inside her snaps free. She stops fighting out of fear and pushes back harder than she ever has. The dream dissolves, and Gwen jolts awake. Soon, the group rushes to the lake in real life and pulls Mondo out before the cold swallows him for good. By evening, their father arrives, ready to drag them home. Finney wants this nightmare to end, but Gwen refuses. She tells them she's staying. She's going to finish what their mother started and end the grabber's hold for good. Their father tries to argue until Gwen finally tells him the truth. Their mother's death wasn't her doing, the grabber killed her and made it look like she did it herself. The truth breaks something loose in him, as he blamed himself for his wife's death. The next day, they go back to the lake. Snow starts falling hard again, covering the ice while they search. Hours pass, Gwen collapses into sleep without meaning to and slips immediately into the spiritual realm. She sees the grabber dragging one of the camp counselors across the ice, trying to stop them from finding the boys. Gwen dives into the water and grabs the boys' bodies, pushing them upward toward the surface. On the lake, Mustang sees the ice crack and pulls the bodies out. Gwen stands between the grabber and the boys. She calls him out. The spirits of the boys grab him and hold him down. Gwen strikes him again and again, and Finney joins her. The grabber's strength drains as the truth of his crimes breaks through, and the bodies he hit are finally freed. When he's weak enough, they haul him to the river and toss him in. The water freezes around him, leaving him trapped in the ice with no power left to claw back. The next morning, Mondo calls the parents of the victims, now elderly, to tell them the news they've been waiting decades to hear. Their sons have been found. Before Gwen and Finney leave, Gwen hears a soft ringing. She answers and it's their mother on the line. Her voice is calm now, warm in a way Gwen barely remembers. She tells them she's proud of them, and that she's at peace and expresses how much she loves them before the line goes off. Gwen turns to Finney and repeats what their mother said, and relief settles in his eyes, and finally leave with their father. Make sure to like, comment and subscribe for more notifications. Until next time. See you soon.